It is with a certain trepidation that I now take up my pen to set down the particulars of a case which, for its singular features and the profound questions it raised concerning the very nature of justice, remains etched in my memory. For many years I have hesitated to commit this narrative to paper, fearing that the public, accustomed to the more straightforward criminality of our London environs, might find its conclusions unsettling. Yet, as I review my notes from that tumultuous year of 1895, I find the strange affair of Mrs. Etherege's husband to be so illustrative of my friend Mr. Sherlock Holmes's unique methods that to omit it from his chronicles would be an injustice to his legacy. The affair began, as so many did, on a day when the London sky seemed a vast, sodden blanket of grey wool, pressing down upon the city's millions with a dispiriting weight. A persistent November drizzle had turned the streets into a slick morass of mud and reflected gaslight, and the view from our windows at 221B Baker Street was one of ceaseless hurried motion veiled in mist. Holmes, who was ever a creature of extremes, had succumbed to one of his black moods, brought on by a dearth of stimulating criminality. For 2 days he had alternated between scraping mournful introspective melodies from his violin and plunging into chemical experiments of a particularly noxious odour, filling our quarters with acrid fumes that spoke eloquently of his profound ennui. "Crime is commonplace, Watson," he had declared that very morning, setting down a test tube with a sigh of disgust. "And existence is boring. What is the use of having powers, Doctor, when one has no field upon which to exert them? The criminal classes have lost all enterprise and originality. At best, we have a clumsy pickpocket or a domestic squabble ending in a black eye. It is a dull, flat, and unprofitable world." I had murmured some placating remark about the virtues of peace, but my friend was inconsolable. He had thrown himself into his armchair, his long, thin fingers steepled before his face, and had lapsed into a moody silence from which I could not rouse him. It was therefore with a sense of profound relief that, late in the afternoon, I heard the sharp peal of our doorbell. Holmes, however, did not stir. His eyes remained closed, though I noted a subtle tensing of his features, a sign that his extraordinary senses were already at work. "A client at last?" I exclaimed, rising from my chair. "Or a bore, Watson?" he murmured without opening his eyes. "The two are not mutually exclusive. Observe the summons. It is not the tentative ring of a casual visitor, nor the confident peal of a friend. It is sharp, agitated, yet possessed of a certain restraint. A woman, I should judge, of good breeding, but in the grip of a powerful emotion. She has been hesitating on our doorstep for at least a minute, wrestling with her decision to intrude. Pray admit her, Watson, and let us hope her problem is of a less tedious nature than the London fog." Mrs. Hudson showed our visitor in, and I saw at once that Holmes's instant analysis was, as ever, unerringly correct. The lady who stood framed in our doorway was tall and elegantly attired in a travelling costume of dark serge, though its hem was stained with the particular yellow clay of the northern suburbs. A heavy veil obscured her features, but the trembling of the hands that clutched her reticule spoke of a deep-seated distress. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes?" she asked, her voice a cultivated whisper fraught with anxiety. Holmes rose and bowed with a grace that was at odds with his previous languor. "At your service, madam. This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson. You may speak as freely before him as you would before myself. Pray be seated. You have come in from the country, I perceive." Our guest started, her head turning sharply towards him. "Sir, how could you possibly know that?" "The mud upon your boots," he said with a wave of his hand. "It is, as I have noted, of a type not found within the metropolitan area. The small, desiccated leaf clinging to your shawl is that of a silver birch, more common in the gardens of Surrey than the parks of London. You have travelled in some haste, for your ticket, a first-class return from Asia, protrudes a half-inch from your glove. Now, madam, you are clearly in some distress. Let us dispense with the trifles and come at once to the heart of the matter that has brought you to Baker Street on such an inclement day." The woman sank into the chair I offered her, and with trembling fingers lifted her veil. It revealed a face of considerable refinement, though pale with worry and etched with sleeplessness. She was perhaps in her early 30s, with large, expressive grey eyes and hair the colour of ash blonde. "My name is Eleanor Etherege," she began, her voice gaining a little strength. "And I have come to you, Mr. Holmes, because I am at my wits' end. My husband, Mr. Algernon Etherege, has disappeared." Holmes leaned forward, his apathy vanishing as if by magic. The light of the hunt was back in his keen grey eyes. "Disappeared? Pray give me the exact details." "2 days ago, on Tuesday morning," she said, her voice catching. "He left our home, the Laurels, in Esher, at his usual time of 8:30 to catch the train to Waterloo. He is a senior clerk at the shipping firm of Henderson & Sons in the city. His routine, Mr. Holmes, is immutable. For 10 years he has never once deviated from it. He catches the 8:52 train to London and the 6:15 train home. But on Tuesday evening he did not return." "Did he give any indication that his plans had changed?" "None whatsoever. He was in his usual spirits at breakfast, which is to say, quiet and methodical. He kissed my cheek, reminded me to speak to the gardener about the roses, and left. It was all precisely as it has been every morning for a decade." "And you have not heard from him since?" "Not a word. I sat up all Tuesday night, expecting a telegram, a message, anything. By Wednesday morning I was frantic. I telegraphed his office, and they replied that he had never arrived for work on Tuesday. Mr. Holmes, it is as if the earth has opened up and swallowed him." "The police?" Holmes inquired. "I went to the local constabulary yesterday. They were polite, but dismissive. They suggested he might have run into some personal trouble, perhaps a debt or another woman." A faint blush coloured her pale cheeks. "Algernon is not that sort of man, Mr. Holmes. He is the very soul of propriety and routine. He has no debts, and his affections they are placid, constant. He is not a man of passion or intrigue." Holmes watched her intently, his long fingers once more steepled. "You say he is a man of routine, Mrs. Etherege. Was there anything, no matter how small, that was out of the ordinary in the days leading up to his disappearance?" Mrs. Etherege hesitated, her brow furrowed in thought. "It is strange that you should ask. There was one thing. About a week ago a small parcel arrived for him. It was a wooden box, quite plain, sent by post from the London docks." "And what was in this box?" "I do not know. It was locked, and he did not offer to show me. But it had a most profound effect upon him. He became different, distracted. I would find him staring into the fire for hours, and he took to locking himself in his study after dinner. When I inquired, he put me off, saying it was a small matter from his family's past. He was not a man given to secrets, Mr. Holmes. It was most unlike him. "This box," Holmes said, his voice sharp with interest. "Where is it now?" A look of fresh alarm crossed her face. "That is the other thing. When I realized he was truly missing, I went to his study. The box which he kept on his desk is also gone." My friend leaned back in his chair, a faint smile playing on his thin lips. "At last," he murmured, more to himself than to us. "A thread, a small dark thread in a featureless grey tapestry. Tell me of your husband's firm, Henderson and Sons." "They are importers dealing primarily with the East. Tea from Ceylon, silks from India, spices from the Orient. Algernon's work is meticulous. He handles the manifests and scheduling. So he would be intimately familiar with the movements of ships to and from Asia." "Why, yes, of course." "Excellent. And his study, Mrs. Etherege. Has it been disturbed in any other way?" "Only that the lock on his desk drawer appears to have been forced. It is scratched and splintered. I assumed the police, but they said they touched nothing." "Very good," Holmes said, rising to his feet with a new energy. "Watson and I will be in Esher within the hour. Do not despair, madam. The problem is certainly one of a most interesting character, and where there is interest, there is hope. Go home now and touch nothing further in your husband's study. We shall follow you on the next train." As our client departed, a little calmed by my friend's confident manner, Holmes was already striding towards his bedroom. "Come, Watson, the game is afoot," he cried over his shoulder. "Get your hat and your service revolver. There is more to this quiet suburban clerk than meets the eye. A locked box from the docks, a forced desk, and a connection to the exotic East. The fog of London is beginning to lift, and I fancy we shall find something quite remarkable in the Surrey sunshine." The journey to Esher was a short one, and as we rattled through the damp countryside, Holmes was a changed man. The lethargy had been replaced by a vibrant, almost predatory alertness. He spoke little, but his eyes darted everywhere, and his fingers drummed an incessant silent tune upon his knee. The Laurels was a handsome, modern villa of red brick, set back from the road behind a well-tended garden, precisely the sort of residence one would expect of a man in Mr. Etherege's position. Mrs. Etherege met us at the door, her composure somewhat restored, and led us directly to her husband's study. It was a small, masculine room, lined with bookshelves and smelling faintly of leather and pipe tobacco. A large mahogany desk stood before the window, and it was upon this that Holmes immediately fixed his attention. I saw at once the marks upon the drawer. They were crude, deep scratches, as if someone had attempted to pry it open with a blunt instrument like a poker or a chisel. Holmes produced a large magnifying glass from his pocket and knelt for a closer inspection. "This was not the work of a professional burglar, Watson," he remarked. "The force applied was clumsy, almost frenzied. And see here, the splinters have been brushed away from the lock, but not from the carpet. Our man was in a hurry, but not so much that he could not make a token effort to conceal his work. He moved around the room like a questing hound, his eyes scanning every surface. He peered at the bookshelves, ran a finger along the mantelpiece, and sniffed at the cold ashes in the grate. His gaze fell upon a small wastepaper basket beside the desk. With a deft movement, he upturned its contents onto a sheet of newspaper he had spread upon the floor. It contained the usual detritus of a gentleman's study: torn envelopes, the nib of a broken pen, and several crumpled balls of paper. It was these that Holmes carefully smoothed out. Most were discarded calculations or doodles, but one small scrap, torn from the corner of a larger sheet, held his attention. "What do you make of this, Watson?" he asked, holding it out to me. I took the fragment. Upon it were written in a spidery hand a sequence of numbers and a small, crudely drawn symbol. It read 14521. "It appears to be a reference of some kind," I offered. "Perhaps a date or a page number." "Precisely, but a reference to what? And this symbol, it is not a star, not exactly. The points are uneven. It has the look of something drawn from memory. Keep it safe, Watson. It may prove to be our key." His attention shifted back to the room itself. He crouched down, his nose almost to the Persian rug, and began to crawl slowly across the floor. "Ah!" he exclaimed suddenly, his voice muffled. "What have we here? The scent is faint, but unmistakable." He sniffed again. "Sandalwood. Not the cheap incense sold in the bazaars of London, but the pure, rich oil of Mysore. Our mysterious wooden box, I'll be bound, was fashioned from it." He rose and moved to the window, examining the latch and the flowerbed below. "No sign of forced entry. Whoever forced the desk and took the box likely did so with Mr. Etherege's cooperation, or at least his presence. They did not break in." We spent another quarter of an hour in the study, but it yielded no further secrets. Holmes then requested to speak with the household staff. There were only two, a cook-housekeeper of middle years and a young housemaid. The former could tell us nothing, but the maid, a girl named Sarah, had a piece of information that made Holmes's eyes glitter. "It was last week, sir," she said nervously, twisting her apron. "On the Friday. I was polishing the brass on the front door when I saw a man across the road. He was just standing there, by the laurel hedge, watching the house." "Can you describe him?" Holmes asked gently. "He was foreign-looking, sir. Dark of skin, not like a Negro, but more olive. And he wore common sailor's clothes. But it was his face, I remember. He had a long, thin scar that ran from his temple down to his jaw on the left side. It pulled his eye down, giving him a fearsome look. He gave me such a turn, I ran inside." "A Lascar, perhaps?" Holmes mused. "Did you see him again?" "No, sir, not since." "Thank you, Sarah. You have been most helpful." As we took our leave of Mrs. Etherege, promising to keep her informed of any progress, Holmes was in high spirits. "The plot thickens wonderfully, Watson," he exclaimed as we walked towards the station. "We have a methodical suburban clerk, a sandalwood box from the east, a forced desk, a cryptic note, and a scarred sailor watching the house. The elements are disparate, yet I begin to perceive a pattern. Our first port of call in London must be Henderson and Sons. I must learn what cargo their ships have been carrying of late." The manager of the shipping firm, a Mr. Cowper, was a portly, officious man who was greatly agitated by the news of his clerk's disappearance. "Etherege, vanished!" he cried. "Good heavens, this is most irregular. He has been with us for 15 years. The most reliable man I have ever known. His ledgers are immaculate." "Was there any question of financial trouble? Any possibility of embezzlement?" Holmes asked. "Absolutely not. I have already conducted a preliminary audit. Every penny is accounted for. Etherege was not a man of expensive tastes." "Did you notice any change in his demeanour recently?" Mr. Cowper stroked his chin. Now that you mention it, in the last week he did seem distracted. On several occasions I found him staring out of the window at the Thames, lost in thought. I put it down to some domestic worry, but he was not himself. His work, while still accurate, had lost its usual crispness. Did he have a particular interest in any specific ships or cargoes? His duties covered all our routes, but our most profitable are the ones from India. The Star of Madras docked just last month, laden with silks and spices. Etherege would have processed the entire manifest. After leaving the firm, Holmes hailed a cab. "To the telegraph office, Watson. I must send a message to my brother Mycroft. His knowledge of the inner workings of the India office may shed some light. Then we shall set my Baker Street division onto the trail of this scarred sailor. If he is in London, Wiggins and his cohort will find him." The Baker Street Irregulars, that curious and effective private detective force drawn from the city's street urchins, were one of Holmes's most valuable assets. Within the hour, their gangly leader, Wiggins, had received his instructions and a handsome retainer, and had vanished back into the warren of London's underbelly. That evening, as we sat by the fire, a telegram arrived. Holmes tore it open and read it with a frown. "Mycroft is being typically obtuse," he grumbled. "He says, the matter you refer to is one of historical delicacy. Meddle at your peril. The name Etherege is not unknown in the archives of the company." "The company?" He means the old East India Company. "Watson, this affair has roots that go deeper than we imagined. The past is reaching out to claim a debt in the present." For the next day there was no news. Holmes was restless, pacing our rooms like a caged tiger and filling the air with acrid clouds of shag tobacco. I knew that his mind was working at a furious pace, fitting together the puzzle pieces we had gathered. He spent hours poring over a large-scale map of the London docks and consulting a thick, leather-bound volume that I saw was an almanac of tides. It was on the second evening that our vigil was broken. First, a reply came to an enquiry Holmes had sent to the postal service. "Ha!" he cried, slapping the flimsy paper. "The parcel sent to Mr. Etherege was posted from an office in Shadwell. It was paid for in cash, and the clerk remembers the sender only as a dark-faced fellow who spoke with an accent. Our Lascar, Watson?" Scarcely had he spoken when there was a scratching at our door, and young Wiggins was shown in, his face grimy but his eyes bright with success. "Got him, Mr. Holmes," he announced proudly. "The very man, scar and all. He's known as the Serpent's Shadow down in the East End. Keeps to the opium dens around Bluegate Fields. Been asking questions, he has, about a ship called the Pride of Calcutta." "The Pride of Calcutta?" Holmes repeated, leaping to his feet. "Watson! The name is familiar. Let me see." He dived into a chaotic pile of newspapers in the corner. "Yes, here it is. Lloyd's List. The Pride of Calcutta, a tramp steamer bound for Bombay, sails on the morning tide, the day after tomorrow. Our timeline is narrowing. Wiggins, you have done magnificently. Here is a sovereign for your troubles. Keep a watch on that man, but do not let him see you." After the boy had departed, Holmes turned to me, his face grim. "Watson, there is a deep and dangerous game being played. Etherege is not the simple victim he appears to be. He is a player. The forced desk was a blind, a piece of amateur stagecraft designed to mislead his wife and the police. He has absconded, not from his life, but with the contents of that sandalwood box, and he plans to flee the country with his confederate." "But why?" I asked, bewildered. What could be so valuable? Something from his family's past, as he told his wife. Something connected to the old East India Company. A treasure, I'll wager. One that has been sought for a very long time. And now the hunters have closed in. The question is, what is the meaning of the cryptogram? 14.5.21. He fell silent, pacing back and forth, his brow furrowed in the deepest concentration. For an hour, the only sound was the ticking of the clock and the hiss of the gaslight. Suddenly, he stopped dead in the middle of the room and struck his forehead with his palm. Of course, what a fool I have been, Watson. It is so sublimely simple, I have overlooked it. It is not a date. It is a book cipher, and I know the very book. He strode to the telephone. I must get a message to Mrs. Etherege at once. My question is simple. Does her husband own a copy of Hakluyt's Voyages? We waited in tense silence for the reply. When it came, Holmes read the telegram with a triumphant cry. Yes, a 3-volume set, bound in green leather, published in 1888. Watson, the solution is at hand. We must go to Esher at once. There is not a moment to lose. A thick fog had descended upon London as we journeyed back to Surrey, and it seemed to mirror the obscurity of the case. Holmes, however, was a beacon of certainty in the gloom. Mrs. Etherege met us, her face a mask of anxious questioning. Holmes wasted no time on pleasantries. Madam, your husband's copy of Hakluyt's Voyages, if you please. She led us to the study, where the handsome set of books stood undisturbed on a lower shelf. Holmes seized the first volume and began flicking through the pages with feverish intensity. The code, Watson, 14.5.21. It refers to page 14, line 5, word 21. Let us see. He found the page, his long finger tracing down the lines of archaic text. Line 5. Now the 21st word, the word is wharf. He grabbed the second volume. The same principle must apply? Page 14, line 5, word 21. His finger stopped. Deptford. Finally, the third volume. His excitement was palpable. Page 14, line 5, word 21, crown. Holmes slammed the book shut, his face alight with intellectual fire. Crown Wharf, Deptford, an abandoned warehouse complex on the south bank of the river. It is there, Watson, the rendezvous point. That is where Etherege and his accomplice mean to meet to divide their spoils before taking ship for India. And the star symbol? It must be a sign, a mark upon the location itself. We must get there before they do. Our return to London was a frantic race against time. Holmes dispatched a cab to Scotland Yard with a terse note for Inspector Lestrade, urging him to meet us at the designated place with a half-dozen stout men and to maintain absolute silence. Lestrade's bull-in-a-china-shop methods may be of some use for once, Holmes remarked as our own cab rattled over London Bridge. But the delicate work, as always, is up to us. Crown Wharf was a place of ghosts and shadows, a collection of derelict brick buildings slumped against the greasy black water of the Thames, their windows like vacant eyes staring out into the fog. The air was thick with the smell of decay and river mud. We met Lestrade and his men, who were shivering in the damp chill, their faces a mixture of scepticism and apprehension. "Another of your wild goose chases, Holmes?" the inspector grumbled. "Patience, Lestrade," Holmes replied coolly. "You will have your arrests before the night is out. Now, silence, all of you. We must find the mark." We crept along the wharf's edge, our footsteps echoing unnervingly in the oppressive quiet. It was Holmes who found it, etched into the lintel of a crumbling warehouse door. A crudely carved star, identical to the one on the scrap of paper. "This is the place," he whispered. "They are not here yet. We shall conceal ourselves and wait." We found positions in the deep shadows of an adjacent alleyway, the fog providing a perfect curtain for our ambush. The wait was interminable. The only sounds were the lapping of the river and the distant hoot of a tugboat. My hand rested on the cold butt of my revolver, my nerves stretched to breaking point. After what seemed an eternity, we heard it, the crunch of footsteps on gravel. Two figures emerged from the mist. One was a slight, stooping man in a dark overcoat, who I recognized from his wife's description as Algernon Etherege. The other was a taller, more menacing figure, the dark-skinned sailor, the livid scar on his face pale and sinister in the gloom. They paused at the warehouse door, exchanged a few guttural words, and then Etherege produced a key and unlocked the heavy padlock. The door creaked open, and they slipped inside, vanishing into the darkness. "Now!" Holmes hissed. We surged forward. Lestrade's men threw their weight against the door, and with a crash of splintering wood we were inside. An officer's bullseye lantern cut a bright swathe through the pitch-black interior, illuminating a scene of startling drama. Etherege and the sailor stood frozen beside a stack of rotting crates. At their feet lay the sandalwood box, its lid now open. But it was not gold or jewels that it contained. Instead, it was filled with yellowed parchments and a strange, intricate brass key. The sailor held a crowbar, and a section of the floorboards beside him had been prized up, revealing a dark cavity beneath. At the sight of us, Etherege gave a cry of pure terror and staggered back. The sailor, however, reacted with the speed of a striking cobra. He dropped the crowbar and from within his coat produced a long, curved knife that glinted wickedly in the lantern light. "Stay back," he snarled, his English heavily accented. "This is a matter of honor, not for you." "The game is up, Etherege," Holmes said, his voice ringing with authority. "Your little deception has failed." The suburban clerk crumpled, his face a pathetic ruin of greed and fear. "Don't let him kill me," he whimpered, pointing a trembling finger at his accomplice. "I am Ranjit Singh," the sailor said, his dark eyes burning with a cold fire, "and I have come to reclaim what was stolen from my god. This man's ancestor, a captain in the company, plundered our temple during the Great Mutiny. He stole the tears of Vishnu, a treasure beyond price, and the sacred map that leads to them. For 2 generations, my family has hunted for this map. We are the hereditary guardians. I tracked this man, this worm, and he agreed to share the treasure in exchange for my help in recovering it from its hiding place. The box contained the final clue. But he planned to betray me." He gestured with his knife towards the open cavity in the floor. "The treasure is there, and it is mine by right." Lestrade and his men began to advance, but Holmes held up a hand. "One moment, Inspector. Let us see this through. Mr. Singh, your quarrel is with Etherege, not the law of England. The theft was an act of war, committed long ago." "It is a matter of sacred duty," Ranjit Singh spat. It was then that Etherege, seeing his chance, made a desperate move. He lunged for the cavity in the floor. With a roar of fury, Ranjit Singh sprang after him. I saw the flash of the knife and feared the worst, but Holmes was faster. He kicked a loose barrel into the sailor's path, sending him sprawling. In the same instant, two of Lestrade's constables seized the blubbering Etherege, who had managed to pull a heavy, canvas-wrapped object from the hole. The package fell to the floor, and from a tear in the canvas spilled a cascade of light and fire. Dozens of enormous perfectly cut diamonds, shimmering with an unholy blue-white brilliance, scattered across the filthy floorboards. Even Lestrade gave a gasp of astonishment. For a moment everyone was silent, mesmerized by the sight. Back in the familiar comfort of our Baker Street rooms, the fire crackling in the hearth, Sherlock Holmes pieced together the final threads of the extraordinary case. Etherege was in custody, facing charges of conspiracy, and the fabulous tears of Vishnu were locked securely in the vaults of the Bank of England, pending a delicate diplomatic negotiation with the Indian government. Mycroft's involvement proved useful, Holmes remarked, lighting his pipe. Once he understood the scale of the potential scandal, he moved with surprising speed. It seems Captain Etherege's theft was a notorious, if suppressed, incident from the mutiny. He smuggled the diamonds back to England and hid them, leaving only the map in the sandalwood box for his descendants. But how did Ranjit Singh find Algernon Etherege? I asked. Persistence, Watson. The man is a fanatic, but a brilliant one. He knew the name of the thief and the name of the ship he had sailed on. He spent years searching shipping archives in Calcutta and London, and eventually traced the family to the quiet clerk in Isha. The parcel was a warning and an offer. Etherege, a weak man trapped in a life of dreary routine and secretly harbouring expensive tastes his salary could not support, saw his chance. He agreed to help in exchange for a share, and faked his own disappearance to escape with the loot. Precisely. His plan was to retrieve the diamonds, allow Ranjit Singh to kill him, or so he would have the world believe, as he would plant a stolen, unidentifiable corpse in his place, and then slip away to a new life. But his greed made him careless, and he underestimated both his accomplice's fierce sense of honour and our own humble involvement. It is a strange resolution, I mused, staring into the flames. Ranjit Singh, a man armed and prepared to kill, has been allowed to depart on the pride of Calcutta with the quiet assistance of the Foreign Office. And Etherege, who merely tried to claim his own tarnished inheritance, is facing a long spell in prison. Holmes blew a long blue cloud of smoke towards the ceiling. It is not always the letter of the law that serves justice, my dear Watson. Ranjit Singh was acting on a principle, however alien it may seem to us. He sought to restore a sacred trust. Etherege acted out of pure, sordid greed. The law has the smaller man, but a greater justice has been served. As for Mrs. Etherege, she is well rid of him. The government, in its gratitude for the avoidance of a major incident, has provided her with a handsome annuity. She will be quite comfortable. He fell silent for a time, the violin resting across his knees. The London traffic rumbled on outside, a familiar lullaby. "It is a curious thing, Watson," he said at last, his voice soft and thoughtful. "How the sins of one generation can lie dormant for decades, only to blossom into violence and intrigue in the fog of a London wharf. Every action has its consequence, every thread its end, no matter how tangled the skein may be." And with that he picked up his bow, and the melancholy searching notes of his violin filled the room, a fitting requiem for the strange and far-reaching case of Mrs. Etherege's husband.